This is a project that's just the tops. See what I did there? Happy Thursday morning. And, you know, I'm going to give you my usual Wisconsin weather report while people are still getting into their seats here in the classroom. It is beautiful in Wisconsin. It was 80 the last few days. The Indian Roadmaster motorcycle has about 200 miles on it this year already. And unfortunately, it's going to snow on Saturday. So I believe I have said in this venue, I hate the expression, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you don't like the weather, just wait a couple of days because it'll change. So yeah, rain and snow on Saturday. But man, up until this live stream started, I had all the doors on the shoulder, air moving through. What we're going to do today is a very fun project. There are a couple aspects to this. One is if there are children anywhere in your life, and children could be somebody my age with a childlike mentality, which is me, this is a great project. It's a great fun little thing to give people. The other thing people use turning tops for, and not spinning the top, but getting on the lathe and turning the tops, is as a warm-up for other turning that they're going to do. So they'll throw a spindle in here like we're about to do and just go through the exercise of making a few tops just to get their body mechanics in place, just to get things rolling so that they're ready for the other project that they're going to do. There are a couple things that we're going to do here. I'm going to show you how to make tops with a scraping technique, which is the easiest way to do any kind of spindle work or bowl work. And the downside to scraping is the surface finish isn't great. I'm also going to show you a shearing technique. So we're going to do scraping first. We'll get a top completely done, and then we'll graduate to shearing. If you can shear your tops, you're going to save sanding time, and you'll be able to really take the tops right off the lathe and give them away without doing any sanding at all. And if I forget to mention it later, I'll mention it now. As a rule, I do not put finish on these. I just turn them and done. Material selection is important. You want to have a hardwood and you want it to be closed grain. So North American hardwoods, red oak, maple, walnut, cherry, and a lot of imported woods are also hardwoods. Closed grained, take red oak off of that list. The deal is that we're looking to put a fairly fine point on the bottom of this, and then of course we're turning a spindle that you grab with your fingers in order to make the top spin. And if you use an open grain wood, it's just going to be really difficult to get good definition. It's going to be difficult to get good detail. And we're turning at a pretty small scale here. So we're using maple. I'm going to use maple today. Maple, walnut, and cherry are great choices for this. The blank that I'm starting with was a 2x2 square at the outset, just like this. And then before you got here, I used my roughing gouge and I made it round. So a 2-inch cylinder a 2-inch blank is gonna work great for what we're doing. The other thing we have to have is a way to end mount this. We have to be able to cantilever this so that we can freely turn on this end. That's a 4-jaw chuck, and you'll see when I zoom you in closer what I'm talking about here. You really need to grab this on a 4-jaw chuck so that we can work on this open-ended. I currently have the tailstock in place. When we start turning, I'm going to talk about that aspect. But for equipment, this is a 4-jaw chuck, 2x2 spindle, about 7 inches long. More than that, of course, we can make more tops from a longer piece of wood, but then we're so far from the mount that this end could start to chatter on you. So I have found a 7-inch piece or so is about as much as I can grip with the chuck and not have this bouncing around a lot. Now, one of the things I talk about a lot in woodworking in general is letting your fingers do the fine work. And this is a good example of that. I said this is fine, detailed work where we're trying to get good results right off the tool. So your upper body is good for big movements. You know, your shoulders are good at making these big motions. Your fingers are good for the more delicate work. So one of the things to watch for when I get the camera in here and you're watching the turning is I'm really just manipulating the chisel with my fingers. I'm not moving my hands and my arms a lot. And that's going to give you better control to make sure we get the results that we want to get. I think with that, we are, I'm ready to zoom you in, but let me look for questions first, and then I'll zoom you in. So one of the things, while I'm getting to the right spot here, if you scroll down a little bit from where you're watching, we have created a hub of information, obviously all woodworking oriented. And if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see a banner, and on that banner it says "Get freebies now." So that's a good thing to click on later when we're done, and have a look at what's available there. And there's a lot of very cool stuff we've put into one package, hub, that's why it's called a hub. So have a look at that. There's a lot of great information there. Paul says, hello from San Francisco. He's probably got about the same temperature I have. What exotic woods will work? So again, we want to be close grained. So off the top of my head, Jatoba, Cocobolo, which is in the rosewood family, probably any of the rosewoods would work and be very pretty. Bloodwood, redwood, or red heart, they're a little bit soft, but they'd probably be okay. I don't know. How's that? Ipe is a very hard wood. It would work. Yeah, I don't know. So again, you're looking for that. You want it to be a relatively hard wood and close grained. And I'm trying to think of the one, not aloe vera, tree of life in Latin. I turned some of that. Somebody has to write what that name is. I turned some of that for a wine bottle stopper. That's amazing stuff. That's very, very cool. Naturally oily. It turns like a dream. It's almost like ebony would be a good choice. Very grainless, like in cutting, it acts very grainless. Boy, I can't remember. I can't believe I can't remember. Okay, anyway, so I think at this stage of the game, one more cruise for questions, because it's just easier to do this when the camera's back here. Okay, you are welcome to continue to ask questions, and once I get beyond what I'm doing right now, I will have a look at my iPad. So I want to get you to where I can knock a board down. I want to get you to where you can get a good bird's eye of what's going to happen with the chisel, and then again, that relationship here of what my fingers are doing to manipulate stuff. So to revisit, because some of you may have missed it at the beginning, I'm turning maple. That's a great choice for this. Hardwood, close grain, makes those parameters. We're making these. So this is going to get cut, boom, 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 just like that. I started with this 2x2, which is also what fits into the jaws of the 4-jaw chuck that you have to have. When we get a little further along, the tailstock is going to get removed. And as a result of that cantilever, we need to have good support here so that we can turn this end unsupported. I'm going to do this two ways. I'm going to do the first one, I'm going to scrape it. And then the second one, I'm going to shear it. So to scrape, we could use a carbide tool like this. That's just a round carbide. We could also use, from your bowl turning collection, a round nose scraper. What these two have in common, the carbide and this round nose scraper, is the shallow bevel on the back, and these are bowl turning tools. That carbide, of course, can also be used on a spindle. What I'm trying to steer you away from is coming in a scraping technique with a spindle gouge. We're cutting end grain here, and this spindle gouge would be too aggressive for the end grain. So it would have a big propensity to catch here and probably put tears in there. So don't use a spindle gouge. Do use either a round nose scraper or the carbide tool. I'm going to go with the carbide. And again, what we're after here is a top right there. Now, when somebody in your life, you or a kid or whomever, goes to spin these, part of what makes them easy to spin is that really shallow profile. It's all about center of gravity. We want the center of gravity down here. If you make this, the body of this thing this thick, it's easier to turn, but it's not, nobody's going to be able to spin it because the center of gravity is up way too high. So I want a very shallow angle here. That's probably only 5 degrees or so. The tip does not have to be needle sharp, but it has to be fairly pointy. And then when we get to this part, we'll talk about making the spinny part. So here's what this is going to look like. I'm running at 1500 RPM. I'm just going to scrape this down, big diameter to small. I'm eyeballing that 5 degree angle. Now look right here. This is what I was talking about. I'm not moving my hand to push this in. I'm pushing forward with my thumb. I'm letting my fingers control what happens here. Because that live center is there, part of the tip of the live center is engaged in the end of the material. There's a dimple right there. I've got to cut that off. So eventually, all of this stuff, I don't want to hit that metal live center. That belly button is going to go away eventually, but I'm going to leave it there for now. I want to maintain that support as long as I can, because having this supported lets me be a lot more aggressive with this cut. If I was already cantilevered, I'd have to be a little bit more tentative here. I'm going to do a little cleanup pass on my cylinder. Now from here, we're ready to start looking at what do we need to do to get a handle on there so we can grab that. You can do all of that work with a parting tool. I'm going to come in just above that big diameter right there. Just going to come in just above that transition. And by coming in at this shallow angle, I'm shearing here. I would be scraping here. So I'm doing a shear because that's going to give me a better surface finish. Look at those curls. Curls are good. So where I'm going with this, I'm going to get you more over the top. Is we're working our way down to the diameter of the, I don't know, the handle, whatever we're calling that thing here. But don't go too far with that because we still have to finish the end out here. If I make this diameter too small, it won't be able to support the cut I have to do out here. It'll chatter like crazy. So I'm going to reduce from this 2-inch diameter. I'm going to take this down to about 1 inch for now. And I think my handle's just a little short there. So I'm going to come up and going to do another pass. I want that handle to end up about 3/4 of an inch long. 1 inch diameter there. Belly button still sticking out here. That's okay. Now we can back off the tool, the tailstock. I'm going to move it out of the way. Now you have to be a little bit more conservative with your cuts because we're cantilevered and that diameter in there has been reduced. So I need this to go away. Can't push quite as hard as you were before. And again, I'm trying to get a distinct center point, but I want this overall angle to be shallower than it is right now. It's got to be about 5 degrees. This is the center of gravity on what I've got right now would be kind of crappy. See, even with a gentle cut, I'm getting a little bit of chatter. I got to do a lighter pass. Now what I'm trying to eliminate there, there's a little dimple where the tip of that tailstock was in there. So that has to go away. Almost there. There. Now I'm intentionally, on a spindle, you want to, whenever you can, cut large diameter to small. And that has to do with the fibers of the wood, the grain of the wood sticking out like this. So by going from here to here, the fibers are better supported. I'm going to get a better surface finish on there. I'm going to do one more cleanup pass. Nice and light. Check my tip. Yeah, it looks good, or feels good. Now, inside here, we've got a ways to go. I want to do two things. One, fix the camera. The two things I really want to do are, I want to finish this, the handle. I'm also going to concave the top of the top. Remember I said this is all about center of gravity. If I take material out here, see how the parting tool's at an angle? What I'm doing is I'm hollowing the top of this surface. That's going to push the center of gravity closer to the tip, and that's going to help this spin easier and longer. So now I'm just moving back and forth, sweeping away. And I'm listening to that sound. When you hear it, I think I'm inside its focal length maybe, huh? There we go. When you hear it chatter, you're pushing too hard, so back off of that a little bit. I want to get this diameter down to about 1/4 of an inch. If you leave it too fat, it makes it top heavy and it's too hard for fingers to grab. And again, by staying high up on the spindle inside there, meaning that cutting tip is really tangent to the top of the spindle, the top of the handle, I'm shearing this. If I was here, if the tip of that chisel was on the center line of that little spindle, I'd be scraping. Because I'm up here, I'm shearing and I'm getting shavings instead of dust. All right, let's get this guy done. That's not a bad diameter in there. Now basically all we need to do is part the top of that from the rest of this, but this is the bottom of your next top. So what you can do to give yourself more room is you can start working on the next top here. And that's going to make it easier to get a chisel in there to separate the handle from the rest. Now we can come in, we can use the parting tool on this. If you practice, you can even use your parting tool. See if you can see it. Yep. You can even use your parting tool to make a little half a bead there. And then we're ready to cut this off. I'm going to catch it with my left, hopefully. Little bit of a whoop-de-doo on the top there. That's easy to fix. He says. Once you have most of that off, this little nub should be the only sanding that you got to do on that. That's our surface finish from what we just did from that. Sorry about the focus. There we go. That's the surface finish from what we just did from that scraping technique. I'm going to look at questions, and then we'll come back and we'll shear one of these. Now, while we're close, let's see how I did. Not bad, easy to start. Would spin a long time. There it goes. So that's got pretty good geometry to it. All right, we'll do a little, see if there's any cues. Whoops, that's the wrong way. Having a hard time locating myself. There we go. That didn't work. All right, it's a little funky, but I'm going to bring you right back in a second. Okay. Lignum vita, there we go. Somebody put it on here. Arbor vita, lignum vita, that's tree of life. That's the one I was thinking of. Dennis says he's got a bunch of wood turned green or dry. If you're doing tops, they need to be dry. All right, not a lot of questions. We're caught up there. Cool. Okay. So I'm going to just bring you back in, and we're going to shear. We're going to shear the next one. Second verse, same as the first, but more better surface finish. Even way more better. Again, this is end grain, and it's not unrelated to that. It's not a bad idea when you're using a 4-jaw chuck to come back and check. Give that a spin, make sure that's tight. This is end grain. We do not want to come in here with a spindle gouge. I'm going to do this with a fluted bowl gouge. And that's going to look, checking your angle, yep, that's going to look like this. So look at the flutes. And the position of this, I'm not flat. It's going to catch. Come in at an angle. When I look at this, that's a little too long. It's too long going this way. The tip is too far from this shoulder. So this would spin, but that makes the center of gravity kind of high. I want this whole thing to be flatter. So I need to take a little off the bottom. And did you see what I did there? I heard it starting to chatter. So I backed my pressure off a little bit. But look at those nice shavings. Watch the curls. This would be a great time for slow-mo. And the reason for doing that, that surface finish is amazing. That is silky smooth. And that is compared to, I got to find the one, there's like 8 tops laying on my table here, compared to that. So this one, that one that I scraped, I would have sanded that before it came off the lathe. This one, I wouldn't bother doing any sanding on. Now we can get a good start here with the bowl gouge, and it's going to be faster than using the parting tool. Part of the lesson here, remember that this section is the bottom of the next top. So I'm going to start by making the bottom of the next top. And I'm going to bring you in directly overhead again, because I think that's better to see what that tool is doing. Oh, please, I'll get you there. There you go. All right, here we go. Zoom, zoom. This is the bottom of the next top. This is the handle. I can only go so far with this tool because I run out of room to work in this little bit of space. If I move the bottom of the top up here someplace, I'd have more room, but it would cost me a top. I'm trying to get as many as I can out of this 7-inch chunk of wood. Woo! That's a catch. The joy of live woodworking. That's when I wasn't even cutting. It's when I was moving the chisel to the next spot and not paying attention. Here's another one. So the downside to doing this with a bowl gouge, obviously, is that opportunity for the chisel to catch. I'm sure I have just a little whoop-de-doo right there where it caught, so I'm going to clean that up. A whoop-de and a chip. This is probably as much as I can do with a bowl gouge because it's starting to get, I'm just running out of space to work in here. If I had in my hot little hands a little bit smaller gouge, I could go further with this. From here, it's second verse, same as the first. Grab that lovely sharp parting tool, which I set someplace important right there. Concave the top of the top. And this portion is the same as what we just did on the other one. Another little catch. I'm going too fast. I'm gonna clean that up. No one will ever know except you, because y'all saw it live. Let me see if I can come around a little bit so you can see how far I'm reaching on that undercut. Yeah, it's hard to get there from here. And I don't want to take the time to move the camera to the other side of the lathe. But the deeper you can get this undercut, of course, without blasting through this side, the easier this is going to spin. Because again, it's all about center of gravity and keeping the center of gravity low. How low can you go? Little high-pitched chatter there. Trying to get my handle, my spindle, down to about 1/4 of an inch. Still doing a shearing cut with that parting tool. Now I'll show you something new. Those tops, the top of the top, the top of the handle, I usually finish with a skew. So you want to practice this before you, I don't know, you make your heirloom quality top. Takes a little getting used to. What I want to do is use it to define just a little bead at the top. And then this is where I'm going to actually sever this. And I'm going to do that with the skew instead of the parting tool. That's what I would normally do. And you'll see the cut quality off of that is way better. So there's that end. Where are we? Just a tiny bit of sanding on that to clean that up. And there's the surface finish on that bottom. See how shiny it is? That's from the shear. Then, let me get you where you can see. How'd that dust get on there? That's a beauty. That's an exceptionally good one. Even with 2 live stream catches. All right, let me do a big reset here so I don't have to look up at this thing. More better? Yeah, that's not bad. Still spinning. Yes, that's a good one. All right, all right, all right. All right, good. I'll jinx myself by saying no more questions, and then as soon as we're done, 200 more will show up. So this is your opportunity. I'm going to tap dance a little bit, not literally, to close us out here. If you have a question, this is the time to post it. So a couple things. At 4 o'clock today, there's another live stream. That's the general Q&A, hour long, 4 o'clock Central Time. So I will be sitting over there at my workbench answering as many of your questions as I can. One of the things I want you to watch for is, I know it's a long way out, but in August, we're going to have, I feel like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, we're going to have a special guest in August. The chemist, the lead chemist from Tight Bond Glue will be here for the Thursday, August 10th live stream. So that's going to be crazy cool. If you have a glue question, and I can tell you 400 of them that Paul and I get all the time, what's the shelf life of glue? My glue froze. Can I still use it? Can I use Tight Bond 3 for all my projects? Can I waterproof stuff with CA glue? Can I do it? So that's going to be, watch for that announcement with Bob, the Q&A with Bob. That's going to be a really, really good opportunity to get your glue questions answered. I mentioned at the start of this, scroll down just a little bit, and there is access to a hub of a boatload of woodworking information that you can get to. That's very cool stuff, all under one roof that we have compiled there. So have a look at that. And then, as you know, Jimmy DiResta was here a couple weeks ago, and his videos are starting to get, they've been edited, they're starting to get on the site. So have a look at Jimmy's stuff. He is fun to have in the shop. He's fun to do videos with. He knows a lot. And watch for one. We did a very fun video called Did You Know You Could? And I did some slightly out of the box stuff here in the shop. Jimmy did some slightly out of the box stuff here in the shop. So that was a blast. That was a lot of fun to do. So I shall look for preguntas, uno más tiempo, and then have lunch. Randy says, could you use a saw to part it off? Yep. So when you get down to that, your spindle is done, your handle is done, and you just want to get it off the lathe, that is a very safe and easy way to do it. Lathe off, very fine tooth saw. And the benefit of that is you're losing less material than you would to the parting tool, because the kerf on the saw is negligible. The kerf on a parting tool is over 1/8 of an inch. And it's a very easy way to make sure that you're not going to screw up your top at the last minute. I'll just mention a couple other things. If you have seen them, there are very cool tools in the marketplace. Sorby has a couple of them called chatter, just like chatter tools. So introducing some chatter onto the end grain of this top is a really, really neat touch. This is a great spot to use a chatter tool. We should do one of these live streams about chatter tools. They're very fun. You don't want to chatter down by the tip. you want to keep it away from the tip because that tip has to remain very distinct so that it has a good spinning point. All right, we are set. I will see some of you, all of you, whomever of you, at 4 o'clock Central Time later today. Thanks for watching. You're the tops. All done.